Hi, my name is Andhra Lutz. I'm the Middle School Chief Academic Officer at KIPP DC. Yesterday, on December 4th, we were really fortunate to have a day with Mary Aaronworth, the Deputy Director of the Reading Writing Project at Columbia Teachers College and the author of Pathways to the Common Core. Mary did several things during the course of the day. She spent a big chunk of the morning talking about close reading, which is an essential part of the Common Core. In the afternoon, she talked quite a bit about assessment and about writing. In her section on close reading, Mary really concentrated on the instructional read aloud. So we read a story called Stray, and she basically did the read aloud and we did the thinking work. Mary brought up a couple of fantastic points. She talked a lot about how we teach kids independence versus obedience. She talked about how we're looking for 100% engagement of kids 100% of the time. She modeled a lot of her teaching methods that she uses. She unpacked all of those teaching methods for us and talked about how we would set up our classrooms so that kids do the thinking work of the Common Core. I think in the end, the part about close reading that was very exciting is that although it's definitely around the Common Core standards, it's also just about great teaching practice. So one of the big takeaways for us was that we really need to make sure that we're asking thoughtful questions during our instructional read-alouds. We need to make sure that we're setting up lots of spaces for kids to talk to each other. So Mary spent a lot of time showing us how to do partner work and talked about what that sounded like. And she even showed us things about how to stop partners so that kids can really talk and think instead of just following a worksheet or something like that. In the afternoon, Mary talked a lot about how you transfer skills and how you take something that the kids are working on and make sure that it transfers to something else. We spent a lot of time talking about argument writing, and the other piece that Mary introduced that I think was very new for our KIPP DC team was this idea of a digital text and how you can use digital texts in terms of creating different argument essays. And that, I think, is part of the power of the Common Core too. It's about digital literacy and kids learning how to truly read, and Mary would use the word read, digital text. That's what our kids are going to be exposed to, and I think we took a big step forward. I think the other thing that our team realized is that we have just some puzzles to solve. So we've been spending a lot of time at KIPP DC looking at the instructional shifts of the Common Core, and we realized that we have a couple things that we might have to change. One thing Mary said yesterday, that we're about innovation, and innovation means that we just keep trying. We never are settled. We always look and we say, how can we do this better? I think one thing that we realized was that the Common Core is about great teaching and great teaching every minute. It's also about really pushing kids' thinking. So one thing that we are going to pay a lot of attention to is how we put questions into our read-alouds so that kids have time to grapple with text and kids have time to really think about, okay, structure means the use of time. How is the author using time? And so how do we lead our kids to understand that authors make choices all the time, which will enhance not only their reading but their writing. So I think there's also a piece about intentionality and planning and the urgency of the work, because the text needs to be complex, and so we need to think about what we choose in terms of reading, how we identify those readings, both in fiction and in nonfiction. We need to pay a lot of attention about writing, and Mary's work around assessment is just give the kids on-demand assessments and then see where they are, let that writing then inform your instruction. And finally, one of the big conversations that we had that was very rich is our use of time. Does the Common Core mean that we need a bigger block of reading and writing? And I've probably had 5 conversations today with my colleagues about rethinking the schedule so that kids have an even bigger block of reading and writing time, which are the essential skills of the Common Core. So we have lots of ideas for professional development coming out of yesterday. We realized that we have to do a lot of work with our teachers about close reading. Even this part rereading, and she would go back and she would start either the digital text or the text over again. So what does it mean to truly have close reading? Other PDs, we have more writing PD to do. We definitely need to make sure that our teachers are really comfortable teaching kids how to write, teaching them how to make choices about topics, teaching them just how to create a story. We definitely need to spend some more time teaching sort of how-to writing, and then the argument writing piece is different from what we've done before. It's not just about writing a persuasive essay, it's looking at two sides and then sort of coalescing those into an essay and then refuting the arguments that you don't agree with. So it's a slightly different task than we've done in the past. We also need to, Mary was really helpful around looking at your units of study, which is what Teachers College talks about, is sort of the scope and sequence for writing. And we went right back and looked at our units of study. She did a great piece yesterday about how the Common Core isn't about adding things in, it's about making sure that you're replacing what you've done with something else. So those are just some ideas that we have for professional development. I know that one of my colleagues, an assistant principal, said, my head is spinning. I just have to look at all of my notes and then I have to prioritize what we need to do. I think that was this other piece that Mary really talked about, is that there's a ton to do. What are our priorities in the next few years? What do our teachers need? How do we support our teachers in this work? Because in the end, my job as a CAO of a CMO is to support principals, to support teachers. How do we make sure our teachers have everything they need so that they can be successful in this work?